Hi everyone. My name is Dr. Maggie Tucker. I'm the lab coordinator for Bio1050. And as you know, it's an unusual semester. We're all online. Usually you'll be doing things like virtual labs and simulators and whatnot, but this week I couldn't really find anything that covered all the bases that we do in class. So I came into the prep room here, and I'm just going to go through the procedure. I'll post this video and I'll take a bunch of pictures so that you can use those as the results, and you can use those to fill in the tables and answer the questions that are in your lab manual. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about kind of what's happening and why. Your lab instructors will talk more with you about that in class. But I'm just going to go through the procedure and show you all the results. First, I'll show you what we've got. So we're going to look at biomolecules in different foods and substances here. So we've got all these different things here. We've got water, glucose, sucrose, starch, albumin, which is like egg yolk or egg white. We've got some instant mashed potatoes dissolved in water, coconut sugar, stevia, olive oil, and then I just used a mortar and pestle to crush up just some pretzels and some grapes. So we're going to look at the different properties of all these different foods by using a number of techniques. So first we're going to look for the presence of lipids by using just a paper test. It's a really basic test. We've also got Lugol's iodine to test for starches, Benedict's reagent to look for reducing sugars, Barfoed's reagent to look for monosaccharides, and then Bioret's reagent, which tests for the presence of proteins. So I'm going to run through each of those tests using these foods. I'm going to put some gloves on, get the hair out of the way, and then I'll get rolling. Okay, so I'm all ready to go. Our first test we're going to run is going to be the lipid paper test. So I'm just going to take each of these different substances, do a small drop right on the paper. So you can kind of see what I'm doing here. And we've all done this. We've all seen drops of water on a piece of paper. I'm just going to let it sit and dry. And then after it's dried, we'll look at the back sides of those paper, and we'll be able to tell which of these has lipids in it because it will leave a spot after it has dried. So I'll go through and do all of those and show you what it looks like. Okay, so while we're waiting for all of our lipid paper tests to dry, I'm going to go ahead and start our Barfoed's test for monosaccharides. Now I'm jumping ahead of Benedict's reagent, which is in your lab manual first, because this takes about 10 minutes in this hot water bath. So I'm going to get that started, and then I can do the Benedict's while it's kind of cooking away. So all I'm going to do is I took this Barfoed's reagent, I measured out 2 milliliters of it, and I'm just going to add 2 milliliters to each of these test tubes. Now I've gone through already and put 1 milliliter of each of the substances into these different test tubes. So you can see that I've numbered them. Maybe let me get a piece of paper. I've numbered them each. So number 1 is water, 2 is glucose, 3 is sucrose, etc. And then to each of those, I'm just going to add this Barfoed's reagent. And then we're going to go ahead, I'll take some photos of what that looks like after I add the reagent, and then we'll go ahead and put them in the boiling water bath, and we'll heat them for 10 minutes to see the reaction. Okay, so I just put all of Barfoed's reagent into this boiling water bath, and like I said, they'll go for 10 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to set up the Benedict's reagent, and it's going to be very similar, almost the exact same thing. I've got all of my different substances loaded up into the test tubes there. And I'm going to just add Benedict's reagent this time. So I'll add that, and I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, so we're still waiting on the Barfoed's reagent to boil. So we're going to go ahead and do our Lugol's iodine now too. Now this is a little bit different. Again, I've got all of our test tubes with all of the substances lined up. This time we're just going to add 1 drop of Lugol's iodine to each of these. And this change happens pretty much immediately in the things where you see a reaction. So it is that kind of brownish yellowish color. So you'll see that, and you can see almost as soon as it hits, Number 4 is starch. And you saw like as soon as it hit, it had that really pronounced change to bluish black. Looks like number 6 is too, which is our mashed potatoes, which makes sense. We all think of that as a starch, right? So I'm going to just add this 1 drop to the rest of those, and then I'll take photos to post. That will also get heated, and we'll see what happens after we heat that too. Okay, so I just pulled our barcodes reagent out of the boiling water bath. It's been 10 minutes. And essentially what you're looking for, some of them will have not really changed at all, like number 1 here, that's the water, makes sense, it's not reacting with things. Some of them will have this kind of reddish precipitate at the bottom, and that indicates the presence of monosaccharides. And the more of that precipitate, more monosaccharides there are in the substance. So I'm going to go through and take photos of these, and I'll come back and show you the rest. Okay, so the Benedict's reagent has just come out of the hot water bath, and you can see some pretty dramatic changes here. The amount of reducing sugars makes it turn different colors. So this brick red has kind of the most reducing sugars. This one is a little bit of a greenish color. And we can see some others here have gone, this one here has gone pretty green. And this one's on its way to a brick red. So again, I'll take photos of those to post. Okay, so our last test is the Bio1050 test for proteins. So for this one, slightly different. I've got 1.5 milliliters of each of our substances here, and I'm just going to add 1 milliliter of Bio1050 reagent, which I have here, but I'm using a graduated pipette, and because you add it just a drop at a time and kind of shake it after each drop. So I want to make sure that I'm adding it properly. We're not going to see any changes here because this is water. But this is what I'm going to do for each of them. So you kind of add a couple drops, shake, shake as you go along. And then it'll sit for 5 minutes and we'll get to see the reaction. If there's protein, it'll turn kind of a violet color. All right, so I have pulled out the Lugol's iodine results here from their hot water bath. And you can see, if you remember before, some of them had turned that really deep dark blue. After heating, that is all gone. Even the yellow from the initial color of the iodine has all kind of gone away. So they're all kind of clear except for these that are cloudy that had kind of stuff in them. I'll show you the others. And again, I'll take photos of these and post those for you to see. Olive oil just looks like olive oil again. And then I'm going to give it a few more minutes to take photos of the Bio1050 reagent. You can see on a few of them, it's a very faint color. You probably can't even see it unless I hold up something white behind it. But it's a very faint color, so I'm going to give it a few more minutes before I take the photos. But I'll get those photos taken and I'll post them all. Now, before we move on, well, before we finish, we're going to look at our results of our paper test. I'm just going to show a few. So the water, it's completely dry, glucose completely dry, much like we would expect. If I skip over to the olive oil, this is dry, but it's left, you can see it's kind of, if you hold it up into light a little bit, you can still see that kind of grease spot, which we're all kind of familiar with from life anyways. So I'll take photos of all of this stuff. I'll get it all posted on Canvas for you, and you can use those as the results for your lab manual assignment this week. All right, thanks a lot, guys.